We go for refuge to all the Buddhas, so that all sentient beings may realize Buddhahood. We go for refuge to all the Buddhas, so that all sentient beings may realize Buddhahood. We go for refuge to all the Buddhas, so that all sentient beings may realize Buddhahood. Now let's sing the Heart Connection song. If you sing it enough times, you'll know it by heart. And then you'll be able to remember it. And just sing it whenever you feel inspired. Mother of Lord Jack, I bow at your feet. These blessed mendicant that ye keep to mountain retreat. You patrons here of your auspicious connection, accomplishing the good of self and others. This hard to come by and easily lost body is well because it's met with your provisions. The richness of the earth with its fruits and rain, and the deep blue sky with its mist and rain, are the connections that bring benefit to beings. The heart of this connection is the Dharma divine. The illusion of the body brought up by parents, and the Guru's instructions so profound, are the connections that cause the Dharma to grow. The heart of this connection is wholeheartedness. My caves in wild uninhabited valleys, and my Dharma practice that is not mere words, are the connections for accomplishing my true heart wish. The heart of this connection is emptiness. Milarepa's endurance in meditation, and the faith of beings in all three realms, are the connections for the benefit of every being. The heart of this connection is compassion. The yogin who meditates on rocky peaks, and the patrons providing his sustenance, are the connections for us all to awaken together. The heart of this connection is the sharing of punya. The compassion of a kind and genuine Guru, and the patient meditation of good disciples, are the connections for holding the Dharma firm. The heart of this connection is Samaya. The Abhisheka with swift Adhisthana, and our heartfelt and fervent prayers, are the connections for our quickly meeting again. The heart of this connection is auspiciousness. The essence of Akshobhya, Lord Vajradhara, please know the joys and sorrows of this mendicant. So Abhisheka in Tibetan is a wong. So how many of you have ever had a wong? All right. So it's very interesting. What is an Abhisheka? The Abhisheka causes the Adhisthana to reach us very quickly and effectively. So, what is it? What could possibly have that effect? Normally we think of an abhisheka as a kind of ritual, don't you? You attend a ritual and you're told you've had an abhisheka. Quite interesting. It's sometimes translated as initiation or empowerment. I think it's very mysterious what is going on with this term, especially in Tibetan Buddhism, where it's you can turn up and be given one of these just by being there, and you go away and now you're somehow, I don't know quite what you're supposed to think, but from then on it's assumed you're practicing Vajrayana, and then you gradually learn that in Vajrayana you have to have a Vajraguru, and then you gradually learn that you have to have a Samaya, and that if you break it you go to hell. And you gradually learn what the samayas are, and you suddenly think, oh, how did this happen? I never signed up for this. And you think, this isn't right, is it? So what's Milarepa talking about here? I don't think he's talking about that. But when an abhisheka is given properly, it's about meeting of the Guru's mind and your mind. So we've been talking all day about heart, so mind, heart, it's actually not separate. Neither of them are anywhere, and neither of them are separate from each other, so chitta is chitta, it's not. So your chitta and the Guru's chitta, you could say, well, isn't our chitta, our heart, our mind, isn't it already inseparable from all beings? Openness, clarity, sensitivity is the nature of chitta, and it's inseparable. So why would you need an abhisheka? Isn't it already the case? And of course the answer is yes, it is already the case. So why don't we realise it? Yes. That's the problem, isn't it? That we don't realise it. So somehow something has to happen where we do realise it. Encountering that as a reality, that actually the Guru's mind and my mind are actually inseparable, and I have real experience of how that is actually true in a very special way. So lots of us got special experiences, haven't we? We meet Gurus and we have special experiences. So are they all abhishekas? And we've been to these abhisheka ceremonies or rituals and hadn't felt anything special. So does that mean we did or we didn't get the abhisheka? Lots of questions around that, aren't there? The ritual itself is broken into 4 main empowerments, the last of which is called the 4th empowerment, which is the essence of all of them, so that's why I'm going there first. And it's this very thing, it's like that, if you like, it's the ultimate Guru Yoga, where you realise you're completely one with the Guru, and Guru in the sense of the Guru principle of Buddha, and also in terms of the human person that you're encountering and receiving this abhisheka from. So if it were successful, it would be like crowning us as being Buddhas. And the method used is, as you would expect, transmission through some kind of pointing out instruction. Could be using a symbol, could be using words, could be something quite spontaneous like being hit round the face with a sandal. It's a famous story of Tilopa. And at that moment, all the last resistances and veils and hesitations drop away, and there you are. you realise you are Buddha completely, you are awakened, and it's stable, and that's forever. And that's the end of the path. So, as I was saying before with the Ngotra, you've got this one end, and then you've got the other end where something approaching that is given the name of the thing itself. In Tibetan there's an expression called jutumba, which means exactly that there's something that's equivalent to the final thing, but it's actually just the beginning, like when we take the Bodhisattva vow and we vow, as if we had realised emptiness and as if we had the Bodhisattva compassion. We say the Bodhisattva vow, but we actually know it's an aspiration, but we hope by doing that and doing it, we will actually finally realise, oh yes, that bodhicitta is our nature, and this is what bodhicitta is always doing, and so therefore we've realised what bodhicitta is. But when we start, it feels like an uphill journey because we haven't really realised that. So it's the same process going on here. At the end of the Mahayana path, you go through the bhumis, through the path of seeing and then the path of cultivation, and you go through the 10 bhumis, the 10th one being the Buddha bhumi. As you go through the bhumis, when you come to the last one, where you actually come to realise Buddhahood at the end of those bhumis, where your powers are increasing in power, eventually you're able to have the full powers to benefit all beings. And as you arrive at that final stage, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout the 3 times, they all appear to you, and they come and they consecrate you, they anoint you, like the same sort of ritual that happens when the queen is given her coronation. It's actually very similar. It's a very ancient ritual, but I don't know quite how it translated from being this ritual that is at the final stage of when you become Buddha, to being how kings are consecrated, which way it went. But anyway, the symbolic meaning is there. That you're consecrated as being the Buddha. It's actually confirmed. That's the ritual, if you like, the rite of passage by means of which you now become a completely enlightened Buddha. So that pattern is then used in the Vajrayana as a ritual for, if you like, condensing the whole of that Bodhisattva path, the 10 bhumis, into one ritual. And it's because it's not in time, it's not in space, so it can actually be condensed like that and planted in you, so that you are actually already consecrated as a Buddha. And now you're just practicing in order for that to become obvious to yourself. And this relates very much to the end of this verse about tendril. What I found really interesting was that not only is it in the Mahayana, really important, the idea of the Abhisheka, it's also in, I met somebody from Thailand who came to see me because he, doing a doctoral thesis, not a doctoral thesis, an MA, about his own lineage in Thailand, where they had having a very similar discussion about Rangtong and Shentong, not using those terms, as he found out land in Buddha within. And he was quite amazed that the same arguments were being used, the same issues were involved. And this was a live issue in Thailand, and was not only live in the monasteries, but publicly as well. This argument was going on in the newspapers, and it's getting quite heated.
Wow.
Yeah, over the last, 10, 20 years or more. And so that was fascinating, and he told me about his teacher's teacher, I think it was, his teacher's teacher's teacher or his teacher's teacher, I think. And anyway, he had been very great scholar and a great practitioner. This is in a Theravadan country. It wasn't Mahayana. And this teacher had got to the point where he felt, okay, I'm going to sit down under this tree and not rise up again until I'm enlightened. So he had a lot of real confidence, sort of intuition that this was the right moment. And then in the night he had the amazing experiences of all the arhats coming, and basically what he described was like an abhisheka. And so after this amazing night, he was very puzzled. He came out of that even more, radiant with realization. He was very curious what this was, because he wasn't expecting this. So he looked through all the scriptures. He was very learned, and so he went back over all the scriptures to see if he could find any kind of explanation or resonance with this. And he ended up writing a great treatise, which is what this Thai chap was wanting to compare with my doctoral thesis. That he wrote a whole exposition, which you'd have to say, to cut a long story short, is really Shentong in its approach. And inevitably it was followed by a learning treatise from the other side, so that the whole debate is still continuing. But what I found really interesting was how spontaneously this had happened within a tradition that was not expecting it to happen. So it seems there's something in the nature of reality that this has a pretty important meaning. It's kind of to do with pouring something. Something's poured into you. And Khenpo Rinpoche, in his inimitable fashion, compared it with drinking a cup of tea. Something has to enter. And yet, at the same time, nothing's separable. So the adhisthana is poured into you, so that you have to have the realization to know what that truly means without grasping onto concepts, which we inevitably do. But the idea that you could have relatively early on in your practice a ritual that could initiate you into this process and empower you to speed the whole process up through the power of the adhisthana of the lineage. So you actually open yourself to receiving this power from the lineage, and it actually can speed things up, which I hear remarkable stories actually, where people do, and you read remarkable stories about how people have been affected very strongly by such a ritual, and especially from very great siddhas. It's the stuff of legends. You kind of hear about these great lamas and the profound effect they have when they give these abhishekas, sometimes to hundreds of people, and lots of the people there not even really understanding at all what was going on, yet still it can come through in some strange way. So that's the first reference, is to this power of abhisheka, which I've sort of taken you into that field of technicality and expertise as something to flag up. This is something I'm not going to understand, but at least I've heard of it. Which is already a blessing to have heard of it and to even think, oh, that might be interesting. So that's one. And then the second one is our heartfelt and fervent prayers. Prayers in Tibetan here is to soltem, which really means literally to ask. So you're asking for this. That's what you do. You recognise this is something that I want, and I ask for it, and then the person giving it has to decide whether they think it's the right moment, and whether they think you need to do something first, or you need more training, or it isn't the time, or you should be doing something else. But there's a real relationship there, whether the teacher would or wouldn't accept you, which of course is very different when it's a public event and everybody walks in off the street, which you kind of think, well, hang on, how can that be? How can that be so amazing and special if just anyone can come in and this teacher doesn't even know you? Of course, if you've got remarkable teachers like His Holiness Dilka Khyentse Rinpoche, and he does it, you think, well, that must be, he must know what he's doing. And I think we discussed it once with Khyentse Rinpoche, and certainly with Victor Shikpo, saying that, for someone like Dilka Khyentse Rinpoche, he literally does see everything as pure. So he wouldn't see it any other way. And we actually have the opportunity then to be in that in his presence, as he's giving such an abhisheka, it can't be anything but good. But on the other hand, we still don't know anything more about abhisheka or what we're supposed to be doing, or what it all means. So that's still left to be found out. So when these two things come together, now the line in Tibetan is a bit ambiguous. It says, through those things coming together, then the meeting happens very quickly. So I'm not sure if it means the meeting of the Guru Chitta and your Chitta happens very quickly, or it means we will meet, because we're making the pranidhana, and the wish to meet again and again and to have a strong connection happens very quickly. So I think you can think it's both. Both senses are there. And so what could be added to that? What other factor, what could take it all to a new level? And there's this word auspiciousness, which I mentioned yesterday, didn't I? Tashi. When you meet a Tibetan these days, you say Tashi delay. Tashi. And actually that's a New Year's greeting. But when the Tibetans came to, as refugees into India, everybody asked them how you say hello in Tibetan, and they didn't have a way to say hello. So they listened to what hello was supposed to be, and they said, let's tell them it's Dashi Delay, which we actually only use it on New Year. But, so they now say it all the time, and we all say it all the time. So we've created a new custom, Tashi Delay. But it does mean exactly this, Tashi. You could say it means may all be auspicious, but in English when you say may it all be auspicious, it's just like a nice sentiment, isn't it? You're just sort of thinking, may everyone be happy, let's make good wishes. But we don't really have the idea we're making something happen, or we're doing something to the universe that's bringing something about. We just think it's like a nice thought, maybe good pattern, a good habit to develop, to have good positive thoughts. But actually, the idea of Tashi is that all the connections, all the auspicious connections are, may they all come together in a way that will be, the most possible excellent way. And they have another expression called Punsun Tsokpa, which shortens to Punsok. So Lama Punsok's name is Punsum Tsokpa. Good, isn't it? Punsum Tsokpa. And when everything comes together exactly, the timing is exactly right, and you get everything you need, all the elements you need is to suddenly appear, and all the people that need to be there suddenly are in the right place, and every connection you could possibly want is right, then they call that Punsun Sokpa. And it's a way of thinking. Like, we do have this way of thinking. We do recognise that sometimes the way things come together in our life seems to be following a pattern centred on us. You know, like you meet the right person at the right time, they give you exactly what you need just when you were thinking about something, and this enables something to happen that wouldn't have happened otherwise, and yet when you look at the situation, it's all totally chance. You know, it was complete chance that I met that person in that way at that time. It could easily have not happened, but it did. So that's kind of, I mean, we all think and talk like that, don't we? All the time.
Many happy returns.
Well, yeah, many happy returns. But that again is a kind of wish, isn't it? But this is a kind of noticing that this is going on, and that somehow, you know, maybe we even have it almost like a superstition that if I make the wrong wish at the wrong time, then the wrong thing will happen, even though there's no reason why that should be from the materialistic point of view. You know, like why should it be that those people sell that house just at the moment I wanted to buy it? But I made a wish, so it's probably that. I mean, it doesn't make sense, does it? From our materialistic point of view, somebody making a wish like that won't make somebody else sell their house. They don't even know you. But we talk like that, and we all experience that all the time. And in Tibetan society, that is actually regarded as being a fundamental Dharma principle. That if you bring things together in the right way, you will get, in some other time and place that has nothing to do with it physically, you'll get the effect you want. It's a bit like magical thinking, isn't it? So I think probably magic has been around a long time because there's something in it. It's and we all think like that because there is something in it. But it's quite another thing if you actually start doing it deliberately. But we do that sometimes, don't we? We have these funny things that, I don't know, if you blow all the candles out at once, then you get a wish. I mean, why would doing something like that affect the universe so that you get what you want? So we do think like that. So there's two ends to this. One end of it is that you can bring things together in a way that will have an auspicious result. So you create tendril. A very standard one would be, you know, when people meet, they exchange gifts. You could say, well, that's a social custom. But it's actually also, they would regard it, more importantly, it's tendril. So you don't come empty-handed. You come with a gift and there's an energy exchange. You could say it's like Mandela principle, there's an energy exchange. And it would be inauspicious if you didn't give something. If somebody gave and you didn't, like if somebody gives you something in a container and you want to give the container back, you don't give it back empty, because that would be tendril for, you know, like poverty. So you give it with something in it. So that's a tendril for wealth and abundance. So if you live with Tibetans, they're talking like this all the time. I remember one Tibetan nun saying to me, well, Westerners are experts on vitamins and we're an expert on tendril. We can tell you what's good and bad tendril about everything you do all day long. Very interesting. So you know, yeah, how full your cup is, you know, like to fill a cup right up to the top is good tendril. Whereas, you know, to offer somebody something that's half full is, you know, bad tendril. They're doing it all the time. And then they've got standard ones, and then they've got you can be imaginative, and Khenpo Rinpoche is really good at this. So it's something that's normally bad tendril, like, for example, what did he say? At an important moment, the wind comes and blows a light out on the shrine. You know, you say, "Oh, what sort of tendril is that?" And then he'll say, "Oh, Oh, that's very good, tendril, because it means that... No, I have to quickly think on my feet here. What could it mean that's auspicious? But I can't do it now. All your glaciers will be extinguished. Yes, actually, yes, you could say it's dissolving into the exhaustion of all the lights at the end of the path of Dzogchen. You know, during the Dzogchen path, all these lights appear, and finally they all dissolve into the Dhammadhatu. And then you say Cheni Zepa. He'd immediately say, oh, that's tendril to Cheni Zepa. And actually there's this sense, because everything's empty, this is actually, and because it's actually, there's no separation between the, you know, as we say in the Chittamata view, there's no external, internal. So actually we are creating the reality all the time, and how we interpret it is actually what it is. So we could take a leaf out of that book, couldn't we? I mean, we could have a lot of fun with that. Creating good tendril all the time. They call a party a tendril, because at the party everybody comes together and celebrates together, which is very auspicious. So all the connections are very good, and you have a party in order to make good connections with everyone, which is, so we're having a tendril, having a Christmas tendril. So I'm explaining that.
Difference between superstition and this sort of thinking. Is superstition more clinging to it?
Yes. So quite often people do get very attached to this, and then they would use the word numtok. So somebody who's clinging to this kind of thing very hard and, you know, getting really upset about it because it's not a good tendril, they would say, well, that's getting too many numtok. You know, you have to relax those numtok. Like Lama Punsok and his chipped bowl. You know, the chipped bowl is a very bad tendril, because you offer a guest a chipped bowl, then that's actually not good tendril, because you've offered something imperfect, which will then produce an imperfect relationship and so on. And then he was saying, but on the other hand, if you then hold on to that as a strong concept, you can create a lot of pain and suffering, and, you know, everybody's upset, you know, because they've taken offence. And whereas if you were to think to yourself, actually, yes, it's a chip in a bowl, which normally speaking is not good tendril, but on the other hand, you know, this person is offered food and it's very good food, and if I receive it, then they make good punya and I make good punya and everything's harmonious, and that's really very good tendril. So that's better tendril than making a fuss about the chip. So it's quite interesting to get that balance right. But you can, and Tibetans do, get very numtoki. And that's why it's this lovely verb, isn't it? Very numtoki. And it could, superstitiousness is a typical numtoki thing to do. Yeah.
I mean, I was just thinking as you were saying that, it's something about light touch again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Almost as if you really believe it, you make it so.
Yes.
As if you have a light touch.
Yeah.
And I'm quite sure where, but that's what I was feeling as you were saying it.
Yeah. It is a matter of getting the right touch with this. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've had Tibetans getting really upset with me about these tendril. I remember once I was, I'd done my washing and it was clean, and I was putting it on my bed, but in front of my bed were all my texts. So I took this clean bunch of washing and I put it on the bed. And my nun friend, she just went berserk. She said, how can you do that? You know, another Westerner, yes, it wouldn't mean anything, but you understand, and you know that you have just passed your lower garments over the top of a sacred text. Yeah. It's not the only time I've got told off. But the point of explaining all that is that there's something to do with the symbolism of what we're doing, everything we do, all our actions, as I was saying yesterday. They are actually powerful symbols, all our actions. And we can, what's the word with it, fill them with, imbue them with more and more meaning and power, really. And so here, you've got this Abhisheka, you've got this Adhisthana, you've got this request for it. So what's the element that takes it all to a higher level? It's the tendril. And they say in Vajrayana in particular, tendril are very, very important. And you hear stories of lamas doing a certain thing because events happened in a certain order. And examples in my life with Khenpo Rinpoche. One time we went to see him and asked for teaching. Viksin Shikpo asked for a special teaching on, I think it was Turgal. And Rinpoche was about to say no, but as he was about to say no, I think, this isn't quite right, but it might have been something like this. The sunlight suddenly arrived, because it was early morning, and the light suddenly hit the floor, and he saw this light, and he thought, oh, that happened at that moment is a sign I should give you this teaching. And then he proceeded to give the teaching, which was very interesting. And another time with a Lama, the Dalai Lama's rainmaker, Yeshidorji, and Viksin Shikpo wanted to ask some questions about the sadhana practice. He'd just given us a Kilaya Abhisheka the day before. And Viksin Shikpo didn't know him very well, but he went up and asked these questions, and he kept saying he didn't know anything about it, he didn't want to answer it, he wasn't, blah, blah. He kept making excuses, he wasn't interested. And then the door of the wardrobe kept opening. So he'd tell his attendant to close it, he'd close it. Viksin Shikpo would again explain what he wanted, he'd say no. And the door would open again. And on the third occasion, he said, that's the third time that door has opened. It's clear I need to open the door of the teachings to you. And he gave him a very special teaching that he really treasured very, very much. I mean, he treasured it so much, he was even crying. He was just like, very special. So that kind of thing in Vajrayana becomes very important. So a teacher might actually give you an abhisheka because he saw certain tendril going on and thought, oh, that means I need to do this. And then if you're very realised, you get to be more and more attuned to this. So, I mean, Khenpo Rinpoche used to do this a lot. You used to find yourself in situations where he'd say, oh, because of that, that and that, I'm going to do this. And, wow. And in some ways it's mad because from the material point of view, there's no connection. It's just coincidence. But so sometimes it's even translated as auspicious coincidence. So I think we're all familiar with that. Isn't it a Jungian thing? What do you call it? Synchronicity, yeah. It's very much about that. So here, the thing that takes it to a new level is if that synchronicity is there. Okay, so you've got the guru with the power to give the abhisheka, you've got the disciple asking, and then what are the tendril? What is, is it the moment? Yes. So Jim then translated that as a little bit of luck might help. And I thought, no, that doesn't do it justice. He said, no, I asked Rinpoche, and that's what he said. But of course Rinpoche was speaking in Tibetan, so he couldn't possibly say a little bit of luck might help. Sounds like Gilbert and Sullivan, doesn't it? What's this? A little bit. Anyway, there's a song that. And I get really upset when we have to sing that last line. I just will not sing it. I think, no, anything but that. But in a way, you can see where he got it from, can't you? Is it the right? It just seems to come from nowhere. That it is the right moment, the right conditions. That it just coincidence. The right things happened, and he gave it. So it's like when recently I went to. Every year I go and see a Churchy Nima Rinpoche, and then one year he rang me up. Do you remember?
He rang on my phone.
He rang on your phone.
It's Churchy Nima here. Oh.
He said, and inviting me to go to his house to, what did he say? I can't remember why. He said, could I come to his house, and actually, so what did we do? We had to meet together with
4 of you.
4 of us. And he called us all first thing in the morning. One of them had lost their phone, another one never listened to it, and somehow or other, from different parts of Kathmandu, we all arrived and got this taxi to his place outside of Kathmandu, sort of special retreat place, and he wanted to give us a very special transmission from a text. It must have been that he'd seen the tendril. And so we have this very special karmic connection now, karmic connection. That's a typical sort of thing, you know. If the tendril are right, I mean, the chances of all getting... I mean, if you tried to get 4 people together at that time in the morning with no plan, I mean, how did it happen? It was so bizarre. It's so special. So that's what this line is. This auspiciousness that's going along. I don't know what, synchronicity maybe one should call it. Yeah. So that's that. And then the last line.
Could I just ask about that? It sounds like it's the synchronicity that like the universe does something or something happens. But you mentioned earlier that we could actually create auspiciousness, for example, by exchanging gifts. I was wondering, in that situation, is there something we can do as students to make something more auspicious?
Sing songs like this.
Sing songs, okay.
I mean, it is auspicious, isn't it? Rinpoche has given us this song, and we're singing it. So that must actually be bringing those conditions together, and then we can actually, we called this weekend Heart Connections, and I don't know why. And then I remembered this song, and then actually it ties in completely with what I wanted to say about student-teacher relationship. You know, the tendril that bring students and teachers together, and the samaya together. And I just suddenly it all came together. What is the question you asked?
Yeah.
The question was,
how do we create it?
How much can we do from our side to create
it.
auspicious connections? Or how much
Well, in a
is-
way, that's what our Dharma practice is. So sometimes I think when they talk about accumulating punya, I think actually every Dharma practice we do produces auspiciousness in this sense. So the more practice we do, the more likely these things happen. And I certainly noticed that in my life. As soon as I decided I was going to follow Trungpa Rinpoche's instruction and go to India, the most amazing coincidences happened, one after another, and all the way to India. I mean, absolutely bizarre connections were happening, and I don't know if any of you've noticed that. You know, once you've decided clearly that you're going on the Dharma path, then you almost get used to it, that these things are going to come together. So there's a way of talking about it in Tibetan which we don't quite have, isn't it? But that's why, you know, for example, we follow rituals the way that they're laid down rather than just make them up. Somebody like Khenpo Rinpoche, who's an adept, he makes up his own rituals. But we follow so that, you know, these have already been tried and tested tendril. I'm just thinking, you know, how far apart we put the bowls and, you know, like which one represents which and so on. Because then that's creating a tendril with everybody else who's doing the same thing. You think, well, they're not, because they're at a different time and different place. But actually, maybe it's working in a way we've got no idea. So that's why we observe these things. You know, you might say, well, we're observing it because that's the custom. But actually, maybe it's more because it's good tendril. And they overlap, don't they? It's just a different way of thinking. But yeah. Yes, you can get quite superstitious. So then the last line is, the essence of Akshobhya, Lord Vajradhara, please know the joys and sorrows of this mendicant. I took that last line from Jim. So this all starts to get a bit technical sounding, doesn't it? Do you all know Akshobhya? Do you know who Akshobhya is? Who doesn't? Oh, so. Vajra family, yes. So that's, you might have heard reference to the 5 Buddhas and the 5 Buddha families and so on. That's the whole area, and the 5 wisdoms. And Akshobhya is usually blue, and he has his hand down, touching the ground, and he represents the, what you could say, the Vajra energy family. Vajra energy is very sharp, cutting, clear energy. So if you're into those 5 Buddhas, you'd recognise, oh, this is Akshobhya. Milarepa often prays to Akshobhya, actually. You've probably all heard of Amitabha, the Buddha of boundless light, and the pure land of Devachen or Sukhavati. But before that was popular, Akshobhya's Pure Land was more popular. And Akshobhya, he had families in his Pure Land. It wasn't all monks. In Sukhavati, it's all monks. I suppose there's some nuns too. But in Akshobhya's Pure Land, you have, men and women and children, and so that was very popular for a long time. I don't know quite when and how the change happened, but it's quite noticeable if you read the songs of Milarepa. He always refers to Akshobhya. I think always. Maybe he sometimes refers to Amitabha. You'll check for me and tell me. It's a research project for you.
Sorry, can I just ask you, if we were to, we're not pray, but if we were to use this song, is it a way of connecting us to Akshobhya?
Yes, of course.
So we could, if we feel that we need a little bit more Vajra in our lives.
Right, and it's also stability, the Vajra, stability, the unshakable one. That's, I think that's right. Akshobhya is Kirpa, which is unshakable. Yeah, you could just pray to Akshobhya. Yeah. With conviction. And then you've got this term Vajradhara, which is Dorji Chang. Yeah, Dorji Chang. It sits like this with a bell, the Vajra and bell, wisdom and compassion, emptiness and skillful means. And always they put Vajradhara as the to represent the guru of all the gurus, if you like, or the guru emerging from the Dharmakaya as the great Vajradhara, holder of the power of the lineage. I must say, sometimes I feel the more characters I have to deal with, the less impact they seem to have. But I'm sure that's just, I think that with Tibetans it's the other way around. The more characters there are involved, the more convincing they find it. But, yes, it all starts to get a bit complicated. But there's the essence, so Vajradhara is the essence of Akshobhya, and he's actually referring to his own guru, who is, as I said, is always synonymous with the Buddha. So guru in principle is the Buddha. My personal guru is the Buddha, manifesting for me, and the Buddha is the unshakable Akshobhya, and that is the essence, is it? No, which is the essence of which? The essence of Akshobhya. So my guru is the embodiment of Vajradhara, the head of the lineage, and the essence of the head of the lineage is Akshobhya. So if that becomes an easy language for you, it could all be rather inspiring, but if it's all like gobbledygook, couldn't you say it more simply? You could. Yes. It's interesting, isn't it? So going back to what I was saying about Abhisheka, that the 4th Abhisheka is the essence of all the Abhishekas, and it's a kind of nutra. So when you're singing this and you're thinking the Abhisheka with Swift Adhisthana, you could think, just from the point of view of the way we're practicing in this Sangha, you're really praying for that nutra, at the ripened end of the process. So you might have had some pointing out at one end, but now you're making this prayer for the ultimate end of it, which would be the Abhisheka, which would have the, obviously would be the greatest form of Adhisthana possible. So it's, though in a way it's using Vajrayana language, you can think it's, it's far away from what we're doing, what we're practicing, because we are actually going for the essence of all the Abhishekas. And the more elaborate Abhisheka of the 4 Abhishekas and how they relate together and how that relates to Mandala principle is something that's elaborated in Vajrayana sadhanas and practices and rituals, so that you can enact all those relationships and, in a way, bring together the tendril for that to actually happen in our lives. There's an interesting hint about all of that. Please know the joys and sorrows of this mendicant. I was thinking about that. What are we asking there? Let's have a quick look. I just had a thought about what it could mean. And what she do? Right. I think it's really, please be with me through all my ups and downs. Because it's chi is happy, du is suffering. Please know the happiness and suffering of this mendicant. And in Tibetan, when they want to, they put 2 words together like that to kind of indicate one thing. And I think it's really like ups and downs. Be with me, know and be with me through my ups and downs. I think that's, Please know the joys and sorrows of the mendicant.
So I'm just wondering, something to do with the mirror-like wisdom of Akshobhya. You can see the joys and sorrows as emptiness.
See them all as equal, yeah. Yeah. Yes, you could think of it that way. Asking the Guru to be there and help us to see that the joys and sorrows are equal. Or just be with me, as I go through all this whole process. It's just, so it's very rich in meaning, isn't it? You could sing it again at the end, maybe. Well, it's good, actually. I don't think I've ever spent so much time thinking about the song. I've sung it many times. Yes?
Just to clear something up, if you would, for me, Mama. The Vajra family is sometimes represented by Vajrasattva as well.
Yeah.
So, are Akshobhya and Vajrasattva interchangeable?
No. Vajrasattvas would be the Vajra family. So each of those 5 Buddhas has sort of sends out emanations of within their family. So Vajrasattva would be in the Vajra family.
Yeah, because in the East sometimes it's either Akshobhya or Vajrasattva, isn't it? With the families.
No. The 5 Buddhas are Vairochana and Akshobhya, that is sometimes Akshobhya is in the middle and Vairochana is in the east, in which case he'd be white, and that's maybe why you're thinking it's Vajrasattva, but it's actually Vairochana.
It was Vajrasattva as well, but maybe I'm at
No, the 5 Buddhas, it's Vairochana, Vajrasattva. Vajrasattva is sometimes put as being all the 5 Buddhas together are Vajrasattva. So there's Vajradhara, then Vajrasattva, and then the 5 Buddhas, and then all the others coming down from there. Yeah.
I think I saw on a chart on the wiki, I think it was, about the Buddha families, where they had got a slash between Akshobhya and Vajrasattva.
Yeah.
And I was
Akshobhya,
really-
but not
No.
But I kind of was puzzled by that, and I didn't, you know.
Yeah, well, if you look at all of that, I think you'll get lots of puzzles. Yeah.
Because I'd expected it to be Vajradhara, you know.
No, the 5 Buddhas is quite clear which are the 5 Buddhas. And then which ones belong to which families is quite clear. But they do have this thing of switching, different ones can go in the middle. So if a different one goes in the middle, then another different one goes to the sides. So that has happened. But don't ask me, what's all that about? How could it be different? If it's, I don't know. I get lost very quickly in all of that. I don't actually find it very, it doesn't draw me at all. Life's already complicated enough. I'll wait till I get there. Yeah. But anyway, there's a lot of it, and a lot of, tankers and paintings and rituals and sadhanas, and Tibetans are at it all day long, doing different things with all of this. But my interest in it is limited. I noticed Khenpo Rinpoche seemed to be limited as well. He didn't get into that very much. But anyway. So now your questions. Now somebody starts their question with probably wrongly. I've always heard that we make connections with all being, and now you're talking to us as though we connect with all beings. So is this my error in reading, a deliberate quirk of translation, or not deliberate, a something ambiguity? Can't get that one. One is much more correct than the other. Yes, it's an ambiguity. Maybe that's his, no, I can't say useful. There is an ambiguity in the Tibetan. It's in the Praise to the Three Jewels. The 3rd verse it says, Namo Sangha, because their mind is by nature cloudy, they have seen the kleshas at essenceless. So they have correctly penetrated the phenomenal world as non-self, which is peace. Their all-pervading intelligence is unveiled. Sees Buddha everywhere with eyes of wisdom, beholding the infinity of pure being. And in the Tibetan, it looks more like beings. They've translated it more like beings. But in the Sanskrit, it is completely ambiguous. And I left it as being. But it could be beings, obviously, because that's what Tibetans decided to do with it. But I think it doesn't matter. But I think beings, it's important to know that it also means that. And it relates to 2 kinds of knowing of how things are and the extent of how things are. So you get the realization of your own true nature, and that's perhaps the first stage, and then you realize that is the true nature of all beings, and then as you recognize it's the true nature of all beings, naturally compassion starts to manifest towards all beings, because you recognize all beings are actually also Buddha nature, and you have what I've been talking about all weekend about this heart connection with all beings. So at the same time, we're all emanating from the same bodhicitta, and in a sense you could say it's all one being, or could think of it like that, or it's being itself. So it could be any of that. with all being, with pure being, true nature of being. Vajrasattva, yeah. So we are all connected because of that. And then that does mean that we are connected directly with all beings. Yeah. Many spiritual traditions, including Buddhism, would have spiritual death as part of their practice, i.e. leaving everything and everyone, including one's own name, identity, behind, and all of it for the sake of stronger, more direct, purer connections to the divine, sacred God. Isn't that the way? How should you define worldly? So this is unmistakably Patricia's writing. And she recently gave me a book to read by Mercier Eliade. He talks about the, the sacred and the profane. So it's a question about that really, isn't it? How would you define profane or worldly? I must say, reading it, I was not at all clear what he meant by it, to be honest. But he was using material and referring to things that I sort of recognise from elsewhere, that there's this whole question. I think it has to be about renouncing what we're clinging on to, isn't it? So we're clinging on to a false view of things. And as long as we're clinging on to that false view of things and we have no interest in anything else, that's mundane, profane, and it's not going to lead to liberation, to lead to the revelation of our true nature. So the sacred is our true nature, isn't it? The true nature of reality, the true nature of the Buddha, the true nature of our own true nature. So I would call that the sacred. And I like that kind of language, holy, sacred, something that you can't grasp with ordinary sort of, what is it, that word, isn't it, Shikra says? Dirty little fingers, can't get onto it. You can't get at it because it's something that's. I know. I've often reflected to myself, why, as a child, did I love words like that? When I heard the word holy, glory. Don't know if I'd heard sacred, but I'm sure I would have liked it if I'd heard it. What happened when I heard those words? And I think it was a sense that there was something else that I couldn't, that was uplifting and a different dimension. It took me somewhere. Maybe it even took me to a non-conceptual place. Holy. That lovely hymn, holy, holy, holy. I mean, I could just sing it all day. My brothers hated it. I could just wake up in the morning and sing. Oh dear. It would be a bit odd hearing a kid do that, wouldn't it? That's what I did. Just like to hear, it took me somewhere spontaneously. And I think there is a strong intuition, isn't there? Like you go into a place where you're caught up into that, and you your body can respond, can't it? Your body can start trembling, and at least you feel a sense of uplift. So And then what is that about? I mean, why should we feel that? We wouldn't expect a computer to do that. We wouldn't expect artificial intelligence to do that, would we? You know, it might be able to fake everything that we do, but it wouldn't be able to have that experience. If it did, then it would be one of us. Yeah, somehow. It's like that to me. Did you want to ask something more on that?
I actually asked two questions there. One is about the whole concept of spiritual death and
Spiritual death, yeah.
And you know, religious history is filled with people leaving their loved ones for the sake of
renunciation.
Yeah, exactly. So just
Well, we have that very strongly, don't we? Renunciation is the foot of meditation. You know, that's if you're still holding on to stuff, you're not opening to that. I suppose you could call it a dimension, but it's like you're not opening. You're not prepared to let go of what you're holding on to, which is blocking your vision. If you're not prepared to let it go, you're not going to. Nothing can. Excuse me. Reveal itself. And I think dying is a very good metaphor for that, isn't it? Because that's exactly what happens when you die. You have to leave all this behind and you just cast out. Like when you really realise that what is being said, when you look at what you're clinging to, your skandhas, that are constrained by time and space and your ordinary logic, and you look at that and you realise that none of that is there. It's actually not there. It's like you're just cast into the abyss. Like, what then? And that takes a lot of confidence to stay and be confronted with that and discover what that is. So it's a very good metaphor. I mean, it does feel like death. It's just like if you have that experience, if there's enough blocking it, you can have a bit of a buzz at the idea of it's all empty. But if there's nothing blocking it and it actually opens up like that, I mean, it could send you into a mental breakdown. And that's why if you live in a country which is, supports that kind of realization, you would find support. Somebody would tell you what to do. But if you were in a country like this, sometimes children have this experience, and then they get labelled as mentally ill because there's nothing to support it, nothing no context for it. And Mr. Shikpa often says this, doesn't he, that in that sort of situation, a person could be enlightened and actually believe themselves to be mentally ill and not actually, it can't really manifest as enlightenment because there isn't the context for it. It's interesting that, isn't it? Is that anything to do with your question?
Yes, can I also ask about the worldliness?
Yeah.
Because we have this assumption that worldliness is worldly activity, means busyness.
Working in the world.
Yes. Yeah. Or just even busy state of mind.
Right.
Whereas, being still and tranquil is kind of, it's more
Holy.
sacred and holy.
Yeah.
But then these two kind of come together when we are running a sangha. Like when we are part of organization and we can get very busy.
Yeah.
And it might look very worldly.
So that wouldn't be the right definition of worldly.
So, I wanted to clarify that.
No, if it's jiktan, which is exactly the same as mundane and worldly, it's your aim. It's what you're aiming at. So if you're aiming at your own good reputation and success and, having a position in the world, which you could do under the guise of doing a sangha, then it's mundane. It's jigten. But if you are doing something even out in the world, like, running a business or something, and your aim is to raise funds for supporting Dharma activity, that wouldn't be jigten. That would be, you would actually be doing Dharma practice to support the mandala of awakening. So it's not whether you're busy or not, it's what your aim is, what that's all about. So if you sit down to meditate and you're nice and still and very quite pleased with yourself or falling asleep, and nothing's happening, you're not motivated, you're not moving in any direction of awakening at all, then that's just jigten. And those kind of meditative states are called jigten, they're called. So, I was fascinated. I listened to Vigzin Shikpa sometimes talking about his experience, his meditation experience, and he was talking to me about how the prana nadi bindu experiences that he's had, and I'm listening to his states of samadhi and movements and changes and subtleties and going more and more subtle, and I think, wow, that's amazing, wow. And he's describing it, and you can tell, when someone's describing something that they're remembering or thinking about. He said, all that's jigten. Wow. All that's jigten, all that's just, doesn't get you out of samsara at all. It's a state of mind you can get in, and it could go either way. In itself, it's not progress. But it could be used for progress. If it's combined then with the insight, it could be used as wisdom, but it can be used as path. But by itself, it isn't. And I think, I would easily be impressed by somebody talking about all of that and think, this person's really advanced. Whereas a real yogin would not be interested unless he knew what the motive of that person was. If that person was well connected, if that person was practicing properly, if they had enough wisdom, then they would be interested in that experience to link the two. But if they're only talking about that, when are you going? It's really interesting. They'd be much more interested to hear from somebody who was genuinely, following a non-jigten path, even if they had nothing much to report, except they were sticking with it and keeping going. They'd be much more interested.
So would you say that this person who is running a business in a world to raise funds for Dharma activity, so would that be, I just can't see how could that be not mundane in a sense, because they themselves are not practicing with their own minds, they are kind of...
Well, they are, because if they actually have been inspired and think, as I was saying yesterday, someone was saying, well, why bother practicing if you can support someone else to practice? And I said, well, it's a choice. So somebody might make that choice. They really have very pure heart, very pure motivation. They see they have skills that other people haven't. They see potential in other people who are going to follow this path. They have really, like in the song, they have faith. This person is genuinely practicing. They will get enlightened together. They're one mandala. So, okay, I don't mind, I'll do the work, and then, you do the practice. And many Tibetans said that to me. Many Tibetans said, you're doing our work for us. Thank you, doing our work for us. And they really mean it. They really believe that. Which is so different from our tendency to think, they're getting on much better than me. I've not done any of that and they've done that, and that makes me a much worse person than they are. And anyway, they're not so good anyways, they make out to be. Sort of trying to see the feet of clay. Whereas that you're not motivated to do that if you actually believe that by rejoicing in the good another person's doing, you're making the same punya. Plus the fact they are actually making progress and you're really pleased about that, and you believe you will get enlightened together. So, yes. So I wouldn't... The danger is, though, my friend Mike, he actually supported me in that way to be a nun when I was young. And I couldn't have done what he did. I couldn't have had faith in someone to practice. I wouldn't have had the faith. I had to do it myself to have any confidence it was being done. But, you know, he had the confidence that I would do it, and so he supported me to do it. So he does make the same merit, he makes the same punya. Quite amazing, really, isn't it? So if you can do that, good for you. But the danger is that you end up doing neither. You kind of get lost in your worldly activity, and you get all this, you know, you get totally involved in it, and then you start to realise, I'm just like an anxious, worried, success-driven sort of person who can't let go of what they've started. You know, I'm just obsessive or something. And then you think, that wasn't so good. I might have been able to do better if I'd gone and tried to be the yogin myself in that sense. But actually, you may find it removes lots of obstacles, and that suddenly the situation changes. You're able to go and retreat. Your mind is very, very naturally grounded and calm because you haven't got all this ambition. I have to do it. I have to be the best. I have to, you know. You don't have any fantasy like that. You think, oh, okay, it's my turn now, and your mind's very relaxed. You know, you might do really well. Like Ananda, you know, I think Tara was asking, well, why did Ananda not get enlightened while he was serving the Buddha? Because he was busy helping everybody, and he was very enlightened, but he wasn't completely enlightened. But because he did that, when the time came, when the tendril were right, he got enlightened overnight. It didn't actually hold him back, really. You could say, well, he would have been enlightened earlier, but so what? You know, he was doing something that was worth doing. And he got fully enlightened later. So it's quite interesting, isn't it? It's not actually... I think because we're in a society where we rate success so highly, don't we? Individual success is a measure of our worth. And this is talking about a culture where that just doesn't exist. We're conditioned by that, aren't we? Whereas, you know, my Tibetan friends, I mean, I'm not saying they don't get caught up in their own little trips, but that kind of sense, I suppose, must vary. But the people I met, I found it was quite relaxed. You know, very happy to rejoice in someone else doing their Dharma work for them. Okay, so I thought, I don't have an hour and a half of stuff to say. I've only got this last verse and a couple of questions. I think we should sing it again. And we can think of Khenpo Rinpoche as being like Milarepa's coming to us through Khenpo Rinpoche. And he's singing this to us, and we're singing it with him. Mother of Lord Jack, I bow at your feet. Please bless this mendicant that he keep to mountain retreat. You patrons, here are the auspicious connection for accomplishing the good of self and others. This hard to come by and easily lost body is well because it's met with your provisions. The richness of the earth with its fruits and grain, and the deep blue sky with its mist and rain, are the connections that bring benefit to beings. The heart of this connection is the Dharma divine. The illusion of a body brought up by parents, and the Guru's instructions so profound, are the connections that cause the Dharma to grow. The heart of this connection is wholeheartedness. My caves in wild uninhabited valleys, and my Dharma practice that is not mere words, are the connections for accomplishing my true heart wish. The heart of this connection is emptiness. Miller echoes endurance in meditation, and the faith of beings in all three realms are the connections for the benefit of every being. The heart of this connection is compassion. The yogin who meditates on rocky peace, and the patrons providing his sustenance, are the connections for us all to awaken together. The heart of this connection is the sharing of punya, the compassion of a kind and genuine guru, and the patient meditation of good disciples are the connections for holding the Dharma firm. The heart of this connection is Samaya. The Adishika is with Adhisthana, and our heartfelt and fervent prayers are the connections for our quickly meeting again. The heart of this connection is auspiciousness. The essence of Akshobhya, Lord Vajradhara, please know the joys and sorrows of this mending hand. We're going to finish at 5:30. Okay. Shall we dedicate this punya to enlightenment of all sentient beings? May all sentient beings realize complete and perfect awakening. May the heart's awareness awaken and unawakened, where it has begun to stir and never fade, and may it awaken fully. Chanchu Samne Rinpoche Mache Vanam Jejuti Chepa Nyamba Mepadam Kame Kandu Kawasho Chanchu Samne Rinpoche Mache Vanam Jejuti Chepa Nyamba Mepadam Kame Kandu Kawasho. You shine with the radiance of intelligence, skillful play. You are a fertile field of excellent qualities. You manifest an ocean of Dhamma, with each point clear and distinct. In all 10 directions the melodious sound of your song reverberates. You sing the songs of the deep meaning of the view and meditation. Genuine spiritual friend, may your feet continue their playful dance. We beg you to always remain. Certain yan tenching and ching, certain yan samadre sasana, takom samo guyan jochulen, shenyen dam hashape taken show. Think about that.